Stream us live on saga960am.ca.
You're listening to the Marc Patrone radio program. If you'd like to call, here's the number: 416-640-0200. That's 416-640-0200. The Marc Patrone radio program, heard exclusively on News Talk, Saga 960.
And we are back with more News Talk. So very glad you could join us on this Monday edition of the Marc Patrone radio program, available on podcast. If you're a subscriber to Spotify, for instance, and you want to check out the show, maybe you've missed something or some part of it, and you want to check it out, well, just go on Spotify, put my name, that's M-A-R-C, Patrone, P-A-T-R-O-N-E, in the search engine, and that'll take you over to the podcasts of the show. And so that's a little bit of info in case you miss any aspect of the show, and it's available to you online. So I guess President Trump's order to kill an Iranian commander responsible for hundreds of American deaths has scrambled the politics of impeachment, putting the Democrats on the defensive in their bid to remove Trump during a possible escalation into war. And I know there has been some of the wag the dog, I guess, speculation around this whole thing. Did Trump do this because he's trying to protect himself because of impeachment? It's hard to see that, given that impeachment actually seems to have boosted his popularity. But one guy who's probably as capable as any of providing intelligent analysis into all this is Miles Kristen. He's with Wisconsin International Radio, and I can hear him in the background there. He's coming to us from Madison, Wisconsin. Miles, welcome to the show.
Good morning.
And so Trump, how much has the impeachment thing been complicated now as a result of the attack on Qasem Soleimani, of course, who he was incinerated last week in an attack at the Baghdad airport. And so now there are all sorts of, I guess, questions around the impeachment and what next. So can you paint me a picture as to where we're at?
Sure. I mean, the impeachment wasn't really going anywhere because the Democrats didn't even want to hold a trial. It has similarities and differences to when Clinton was impeached because, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was Operation Red Fox or Red Dawn or something like that. When Clinton was getting impeached, we were bombing Iraq at the same time.
That's right.
And I think I was saying before that, you were literally watching live TV, watching impeachment coverage on one side and bombings going on in Iraq on the other side of the TV. This is not like that because there aren't impeachment proceedings going on to start off with. And I don't think that Trump's actually doing this whole Iran thing as a way to, increase his popularity or help his reelection, because one of the things that people have liked about him over the last few years is that he wasn't as militaristic or as pro-war as some of the other ones.
Yeah, absolutely. I think people liked the fact that he was pulling out of, I think he had reduced some of the contingency, some of the grouping in Afghanistan and in Syria, and then he'd also been restraining himself in terms of bombing Iran earlier following the shooting down of that drone. And so people thought, he's going to get attacked no matter what he does, though, isn't he? I mean, if he did nothing, then he would have been portrayed as this ineffectual, weak guy who was allowing the Iranians to walk all over him during the siege, of course, of the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad. So he responds, so naturally he's a warmonger. And in fact, this Soleimani has now been elevated to the level of sainthood now amongst some quarters, and certainly in Iran where you would expect, but also even some places in North America amongst the left and so forth. We've seen some rallies, even here in Toronto, where people are saying that Trump was way off base, that he did a terrible thing in having this man killed. And so it's...
I mean... you take out a guy like this, he's going to probably be replaced very quickly by someone just as bad. I wonder if he was in Iraq, then why couldn't military forces capture him? And I know that the trial would be a long process, but it's the problem with American foreign policy is bigger than Trump. Bush and Obama are actually even just a small part of the long story of America. Gave Iraq weapons to attack Iran, gave Iran weapons to attack Iraq. That went back and forth. There's the whole issue of when we, had through a coup there, I want to say in the 50s. When we talk about places like Iraq, if we wanted to get Saddam out of power, with the amount of money and energy we put into getting Saddam out, we could have probably got Saddam out without a full-scale invasion. We could have put $1 billion bounty on Saddam's head and thrown a coup in Iraq. Not that I'm advocating for coups, but I don't think what we did in 2003 was the best way of removing Saddam Hussein. And
isn't it possible that the defense contractors are unhappy with Trump because he hasn't been more of a warmonger? They were hoping to get to Hillary in there, and then there probably almost certainly would have been at least another war or two. These people want wars. I was reading something. I was reading something that some of the push for impeachment was actually coming or funded from some of the defense contractors. I don't know if that's true or not, but clearly these people are in the business. They want trillions of dollars, in profits that war brings about. And so if they're not getting enough bloodshed in the form of attacks, and so the makers of cruise missiles and F-16s and all these other weapons of war, they need the war machine in high gear, and maybe they weren't getting that from Trump. So, among all the other people who don't like Trump, maybe the arms industry is on that list. Is that fair?
Possibly. I don't have the facts to necessarily back that up, but I see that as a theory that's very possible. In 2016, the three biggest recipients of military contractor donations was Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, and Ted Cruz. Actually, I want to say Bernie was number 3. But, Bernie Sanders took over $300,000 from military defense contractors. And when Trump came into office, I think it was within the first year, he dropped what was called the MOB, the mother of all bombs. It's like the largest non-nuclear bomb ever used in human history. Dropped it on Afghanistan, and not a peep from a single Democrat. And so, I could make the argument about a president needs congressional approval to attack countries and so forth, and I guess the response would be, well, President Bush was given authority, 15 years ago, 16 years ago, or that there's the Military Authorization Act that have been renewed again and again and again. But it's like, no, there should be congressional approval for any, major military strike like this, and no matter who it is in office. But, it's the Democrats wouldn't be upset at all if this was a Democrat in office. They would be defending it. Obama bombed weddings in Pakistan, bombed 16-year-old U.S. citizens who happened to be abroad, and not a peep from any of the Democrats.
Yeah, it's bizarre. Anybody that Obama killed, well, they deserve to be killed. But when Trump goes after somebody, well, the guy was just great. There was nothing wrong with him. Interesting.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I don't really care about the general. It's like the hundreds of thousands of innocent civilians that got killed over the last 2 decades in these wars. It's terrible. It's terrible, and Bush and Obama, and yes, Trump too, they're all responsible for the deaths of hundreds of thousands of civilians, and you don't hear most of the politicians talking about that.
Interesting story that's linked to Off Drudge onto the PBS.org. Small cracks have appeared in GOP unity on impeachment trial. How much of this is wishful thinking on the part of the media and the Trump haters and the Democrat Party and so forth? Because their suggestion here, I guess, is that maybe the Republicans are not as united in terms of dismissing the idea that Trump should be impeached. In other words, that maybe there are a few people, some of those Republicans, that maybe, sure, you've got your never Trumpers and so forth, but maybe there's a few more than that who would actually kind of be supportive of the idea of having Trump impeached.
Even if 10 of the Republican senators were to flip, which is a huge number, even if 10 were to flip and support impeachment, it's still not enough. You need a 2/3 majority of 100 senators, and the Republicans already control the Senate. So basically, you would need something like 67 votes for impeachment, and they don't have it. They don't have the support needed, even if a lot of the Republicans flipped over to the other side.
Okay, so we're in an election year now in the United States, and I guess the latter part of the Democrat race. I mean, do you see? Sometimes I hear Bernie is surging, and that Biden is maybe languishing a little bit. Other days I hear that Biden is going to win. Then you're still hearing that Elizabeth Warren is kind of hanging in there.
Yeah, she got the support of, she got the endorsement of Julian Castro today, which is like, who cares?
That's right.
I definitely think Trump will be reelected, but then again, anything is possible. But the Democrats have done a terrible job. I have a really funny story. A friend of mine recently said to me, and she's from another country, so her English is a little bit different at times, but she goes, she wasn't really aware of who was still in the race, and she goes, so who are still running for the runners-up for the Democrats? And it was just really ironic. It's like, yeah, the runners-up is definitely the way to look at it. I definitely think Trump will get reelected. And, also I think the Trump we see today is created by our society in so many ways, from being that, Wall Street tycoon to just his policies, where he stands as a president, I think has a lot to do with the way the Democrats and the protesters have treated him, because they in some ways they pushed him to the right, where I think a lot of the Never Trump movement that was in the Republicans was because Trump actually had a lot of left-wing policies, like taking care of his policies of sorry, I'm trying to think of the exact terminology for it, the paid time off for maternity leave.
Okay.
Like, there were a lot of things about Trump that were more left-wing, and that's why I don't think he was liked by the Republicans at first. And then the left pushed Trump to the right with such their animosity against him, where like his only base he had left was, well, I got to stay with the more right side of the Republicans and so forth. And if Trump's becoming a neocon, it's because the left has pushed him so far away,
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I mean, the evangelical crowd, I don't know where they stand. One day I hear that they're behind him, and the next day I hear they're against him. I'm hearing different stories about African-American voters. There was a story not that long ago, mind you, it wasn't Breitbart. I think it's a reputable news organization, but they were suggesting that that black support for Trump it could be much higher than it was. In fact, it almost certainly will be higher than it was last time, with more and more.
Absolutely. I wouldn't be surprised if Donald Trump actually triples the amount of support from the African American community. Granted, before Trump, their support level was at a good 10%, if that. But the support for Trump amongst people of color is increasing a lot. I would argue they should vote for the Libertarian Party, but the Democrats aren't really giving them a good reason to vote for them.
Man, that would
2016, 2016, Hillary tried all the time to get the support of the black community by talking about things like but at the same time, then they would end it with, we also have to support police and so forth.
Yeah, that's right. So stop and frisk and all that stuff, like Bloomberg's. Yeah. But that would be devastating. 25%, if he gets 1 in 4 African American votes, that would obliterate the Democrats.
Yeah.
I mean, and I know your dogs agree with me. I can hear them barking.
Yeah,
man.
they're going nuts. The electrical guys here. I guess I got to rush pretty quick.
All right, buddy. Listen, thank you so much. I really appreciate this, Miles.
Thank you for having me.
All right, bye-bye. That is Miles Kristen from Wisconsin International Radio. Always great chatting with Wisconsin, with Miles, rather, and hopefully he can tend to those dogs. They sound like they're hungry or something. We'll be back with more News Talk after this.
Stream us live at saga960am.ca.